This is my 68th video on my work with OO gauge. See part 1 of this series for my reasons for getting into OO gauge when I already had a lot invested in working in N gauge and I didn't really have space available for a large, fully operational OO gauge layout. Also see my lengthy series on my N gauge railway modelling for smaller and more complex scenery and smaller scale trains running. This part is a follow-on from part 66, my previous video about cameras to be used for my model railway videos. There was also a bit of follow-on about cameras in part 67. The layout will be on view quite a bit in this part, but I'm afraid it's going to get a bit technical about camera features and such as well. At the end of part 67, I was just doing a little bit of video with this cheapy action cam that I bought from TomTop several years ago. At that time, the only way I could find to attach the camera to a tripod was to put it into this waterproof case, which was all well and good, but the camera couldn't record sound when it was in this case, and of course there was also an extra layer of plastic in front of the lens. However, after I recorded that part, by chance I came across this, which is another holder for that little action cam. This one just clips around the cam and has tripod attachments on both top and bottom, so it can be used for tripod recording with this camera with sound and without obstructing the lens or any of the buttons. The camera just clips into the mount like this, and then it can be mounted on the tripod. I also realised that whilst this camera does not have a zoom as such, it does have an option in the menu to set the angle to wide, mid or narrow. Wide is the default, and basically it seems that this is just a form of digital zoom. I tried it on the mid-angle setting at 720 pixel resolution and the result was absolute garbage, too fuzzy to be any use at all. But on the mid-angle setting at 27K resolution, the result wasn't too bad. So here's a little video shot like that, mid-angle 27K resolution in the clip mount. At this point I still wasn't terribly happy with my camera options, especially as regards video. But I also wasn't very optimistic about what I could see available for purchase on Amazon, etc. The sort of cheap video camera available there in the $200 range or so basically got very poor reviews when I dug a bit deeper. The cheapest name brand video camera available was the Canon Vixia HFR800, which was available for around $400. This is Canadian, I'm talking, because I live in Canada. But even that didn't get all that great reviews for the kind of use I needed, working in low light and shooting small subjects. On the other hand, I'd already looked into compact cameras, and I bought the Panasonic Lumix TS30 for just over 200 Canadian. I was happy enough with the pictures that took, but not terribly happy with the video. So what to do? Of course, I could have just made do with what I had, since I could produce results that weren't too bad. But once I get my teeth into something, I have trouble letting go. So I turned to the used market for items. Specifically, I looked at what was for sale on Kijiji in my neck of the woods. And, well, I had to poke around a bit and widen my search beyond my hometown to the surrounding 50 kilometers or so, but then I did find some interesting items for sale. Naturally, when I saw items for sale, I looked at specs and reviews for the item before trying to contact the seller. The first camera I bought on Kijiji used was this Sony Dsc Hs60v. I think the simplest way to characterize this is that it is a high-end compact camera from around 2014. So, quite a few years old now, but definitely at the higher end of its type when it came out, and so it still holds up quite well. It has a 20.4 megapixel sensor, quite a bit more than the Lumix TS30. On the other hand, it isn't quite as small and handy as the TS30, being quite a bit larger and heavier. It has a much more substantial lens than the TS30. This is what the lens looks like when the camera is first turned on. When the camera's turned off, the lens automatically retracts and a protector closes over it. And this is what the lens looks like when it is fully extended. The Hs60v has a 30 times optical zoom, equivalent to 24mm to 720mm for a 35mm film camera, so basically from substantially wide angle to seriously telephoto. The camera also has a sensor that's supposed to be capable in low light and is supposed to have excellent image stabilization. I paid $125 Canadian for this used. It has a few scratches in the finish if you look closely, but generally seems to be in good condition. Fingers crossed, no guarantees of course with a used item like this. Let's look at a couple of pictures shot with the Hs60v. Of course, you won't be able to see the full image quality here by any means, as I'll only be posting this video to YouTube at 720 by 1280 resolution, whereas this image is actually 2920 by 5184. That is 16:9 aspect ratio and just over 15 megapixels. This is without flash, just with the normal lighting that I have on the layout. Here's the same view using the Hs60v's auto flash option. Here's a close-up of the Royal Scot Loco without flash. And the same view with auto flash. Now let's see some video shot with the Hs60v. First, tripod mounted with the regular layout lighting. Now with the ring light mounted on the tripod, a slightly higher angle in order to be able to get the ring light over the layout. Those videos were shot in 1080 pixel 60 frames per second, but this is going on YouTube at 720 pixel 30 frames per second. I was still keeping my eyes open for better video options, and I saw this camera pop up on Kijiji. This is a Sony Handycam HDR Cx700V. This was the top-of-the-range prosumer camcorder from Sony around 2011, so older than the Hs60v, but intended as a dedicated video camera, though it can also take still images. This got excellent reviews and seems to have been generally recognized as one of the best of its type for its time. Although it's now 10 years old, its specs are still way higher than something like the Canon Vixia HF R800. The R800 is the bottom of Canon's current range, whereas the Cx700V was basically the top of Sony's range at the time, other than cameras with special features such as dual-lens 3D recording. This is very much a camcorder type format. It comes with 96 GB of internal memory, so it can record plenty of video with no need for an SD card, but it does also have an SD card slot. It also has many other features, such as built-in GPS, so that's likely to be irrelevant to me. It has a USB connector built into the strap, however this is a bit awkward. It doesn't extend at all, so plugging it into a desktop PC is, well, you basically have to hold the camera in mid-air if you don't use a USB extension cord. So I had to order another USB extension cord to work with it. I had a couple, but they were already basically devoted to other uses. There's a 3-inch flip-out touchscreen that can be rotated to any angle, including turning it right over so that it faces forward, which you would want if you were going to video yourself. The screen is clear and the touchscreen works well, but you do have to use the touchscreen to access many of the camera's features. There's no alternative way of navigating the menus, etc., other than touching the screen, which I'm not terribly keen on. With my fingers I struggle a bit with touchscreens, and also touching the screen all the time tends to make marks on it, which isn't helpful as this is also your main viewfinder. I do, however, say main viewfinder, as the camera does also have a pull-out viewfinder at the back, which can be used instead of the flip-out screen. The lens has 10 times optical zoom, giving focal lengths equivalent to 26.3mm to 263mm on a 35mm film camera, so from wide angle to considerable telephoto. The camera comes with a lens hood mainly to avoid flare at the wider angles, but this can be removed if not wanted. It shoots video in 1080 pixel resolution up to 60 frames per second, though it also has a 24 frames per second mode if you want a more cinematic look. I paid $400 Canadian for this camera used, which was more than I was originally planning to spend, but I thought it was a fair price and probably a worthwhile investment. This camera is certainly way more capable than anything that I could have bought new for the same price. So now let's see some video shot with this dedicated video camera. Firstly, just on the tripod with the regular layout lighting. Now on the tripod again, but with the ring light and also with panning, tilting and zooming. Now some handheld video, since this camera is clearly very much designed for that. But let's face it, this camera is not really necessarily made to be used on a tripod. You should be able to hand hold it, especially if you learn how to do it. I'm kind of sucking at the moment, but because I don't know how to use it. But trying to handhold and use the camera whilst at the same time managing the train is not easy. You really need two people, one to be the cameraman and one to operate the train, but there's only one of me and I can't get, obviously I'm doing a rather poor job of operating that zoom. It's kind of jerky. It moves quickly. You've got to be very gentle with the zoom control. But there we go. We'll zoom all the way out and stop for now.
Finally, some video showing the camera's macro ability.
I'm still just playing around with this, but I noticed that it has a macro record video mode, so I'm just trying to see what that does. Where is it? Now I'm getting in the way of the light here, aren't I? Well, I think you'd have to say there are some definite possibilities here if I learn to use the thing. I wish that zoom control were just a little bit slower. It's really, I find it really hard to operate it smoothly. You know, it tends to shoot in really quickly. Oh. Now it's switched to macro mode. I'm sure you can switch it to macro mode automatically if you want to, but you know, you've got to sort of know what you're doing. Now it's out of macro mode again. Oh well, we shall have to see and learn, shan't we?
I just wanted to explore the capabilities of the two cameras that I bought used a bit more. I took a few more still images with the Hs60v. Here's a close-up of a Loco, my Dapol Royal Scot, using the Hs60v's macro mode with the fill flash option. And here's my Bachmann Ginty shot with the same options. Here's one end of my station's back platform shot with quite a long lens extension. Given that this was shot handheld and telephoto, I think it illustrates the effectiveness of the camera's image stabilization. Here's the other end of the platform shot the same way, maybe with even a bit longer focus. And here just a little wider to take in the footbridge. And here a bit wider still, showing the bridge at the other end of the station. And here's a view of the little Dapol Sentinel shunter. This was shot with long focus rather than by going in close. And here's a view of the Railway Hotel built from the Super Quick kit at medium focal length. And finally a wide shot of almost the whole layout. I think there's no doubt that the Hs60v is a very capable still camera. Now let's see a little handheld video shot with the Hs60v. Well, like the curate's egg, that was good in parts. I think it's fair to say that the Hs60v is definitely somewhat limited as a video camera compared to the Cx700V. But that, of course, is to be expected, since the Hs60v is primarily a still camera, whereas the Cx70V is primarily a video camera, and also a more expensive product, albeit a couple of years older. But to finish, let's put the shoe on the other foot and have a look at what the Cx700V can do in the way of still images. Here's a close-up of the Royal Scot with no flash, although the Cx700V does actually have a built-in flash for still photography. Here's a picture of the Bachmann Ginty, again without flash. Actually, I forgot that the Cx700V had flash. Here's the back platform, shot telephoto. And here are the buildings on the back platform. And here the end of the platform with the footbridge. And here the railway hotel. And finally the Daypole Sentinel. This probably wasn't entirely a fair comparison, as the Hs60V shots were with fill flash, whereas the Cx700V stills were without flash. Well, I've definitely spent more money than I originally intended to, but if the cameras continue to function okay, I believe I've now got better tools for making my railway modelling videos, and potentially for any other still and video photography that I might want to do.